The transport doors hissed open, revealing 4 heavily armed guards dragging something massive between them. Dominic Reese looked up from the ventilation panel he was repairing, his wrench frozen mid-turn. "Stand back," barked Commander Titus, his pulse rifle trained on the creature as technicians scrambled away from the loading bay. "Secure the specimen in Containment Unit Alpha." The alien was magnificent and terrifying, nearly 8 feet tall with iridescent violet skin that shifted like oil over powerful muscles. 6 talon-tipped limbs ended in deadly claws, while a crown of bony spines framed 4 glowing emerald eyes. 2 of her arms were bound in neutronium shackles that pulsed with energy-dampening fields. "Careful with the Caraxes female," Dr. Wexler said, clutching his data pad. "This specimen cost the Institute 18 lives to capture." Dominic watched as they forced her into the reinforced cell, the creature roaring with such primal fury that several guards flinched backward. But Dominic didn't see mindless rage in those eyes. He saw intelligence and something else. Grief. For 3 weeks, Dominic observed the scientists' routines from the periphery as he maintained the facility's systems. They prodded her with electrified batons, extracted tissue samples, and tested her responses to various stimuli, always from behind barriers, always with weapons ready. "They're treating her like an animal," he muttered one evening, replacing a damaged circuit in the observation room while Dr. Wexler reviewed footage. "Because that's exactly what it is," Wexler replied without looking up. "The Caraxes are biological weapons, genetically engineered for warfare. They destroyed 3 colonial outposts before we understood what we were dealing with." But something didn't add up. Dominic had watched her during quiet moments when she thought herself unobserved. She traced complex patterns on the floor of her cell, patterns that looked suspiciously like mathematical equations. One night, working late to repair climate controls near her containment unit, Dominic found himself alone in the dimly lit corridor. The facility hummed with the quiet of skeleton staff hours. He approached her cell, something pulling him forward despite every security protocol he'd been drilled on. The Caraxes female was huddled in the corner, her massive frame somehow smaller in repose. Up close, he could see intricate markings across her skin, not random patterns, but what appeared to be deliberate scarification, perhaps even a form of writing. "Can you understand me?" he whispered, pressing his palm against the transparent barrier. Her head snapped up, all 4 eyes fixing on him with startling intensity. She moved with liquid grace to the barrier, towering over him. For a long moment, she simply stared. Then she raised one massive hand and mimicked his gesture, pressing her palm against his through the barrier. "I'm Dominic," he said, tapping his chest. She tilted her head, studying him. Then, with deliberate slowness, she opened her mouth, revealing rows of sharp teeth, and produced sounds, guttural but patterned. "Dominic?" she repeated, the name transformed by her alien vocal structures, but unmistakable. His heart nearly stopped. They said your kind couldn't speak." She made a sound like distant thunder, what he would later realize was laughter. Then she tapped her own chest. "Ashara." Over the next week, Dominic created reasons to work near her cell during night shifts. Their conversations evolved rapidly, her grasp of human language accelerating with each interaction. She wasn't just intelligent, she was brilliant. "My people are scholars, builders," she told him one night, her voice a rumbling purr. "What your kind calls Caraxes is our word for the enlightened ones." "Then why?" he began. "Lies," she growled, pressing closer to the barrier. "Your leaders needed our worlds. Easier to take them if the galaxy believes we are monsters." When her taloned hand pressed against the barrier, Dominic no longer saw a beast. He saw a woman, powerful, wounded, and beautiful in her alien majesty. Their eyes locked, and something electric passed between them. "I will help you," he whispered, a promise that would change everything. Behind him, a door hissed open. Dr. Wexler stood frozen in the entranceway, his eyes wide with shock as he witnessed their exchange. "Reese! Get away from that thing!" he shouted, already reaching for the security alarm. But it was too late. Dominic had seen the truth in Ishara's eyes, and nothing would ever be the same. Retri Claude can make mistakes.
You realize what this means? Dr. Wexler paced the length of Director Prescott's office, his hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and fear. The specimen is sentient, beyond sentient. She's communicating at advanced linguistic levels. Director Prescott's weathered face remained impassive, but her eyes had hardened to steel. What I realize, Doctor, is that you've allowed a maintenance worker unrestricted access to the most dangerous asset in this facility. With respect, Director, Dominic interjected, standing rigidly at attention. Ishara isn't dangerous unless threatened. Her species. Her name is Specimen K, 937, Prescott cut in sharply. And you will refer to it as such. Her name is Ishara, Dominic insisted quietly. And everything we've been told about the Caraxes is wrong. The disciplinary hearing ended with Dominic reassigned to night shifts, an attempt to separate him from the alien prisoner. What the administration didn't anticipate was how this would give him even more unmonitored time with Ishara, as the facility operated with minimal staffing after hours. In the dim glow of emergency lighting, Dominic disabled the surveillance cameras for what the logs would show as routine maintenance. He approached Ishara's cell carrying a small device he'd constructed from spare parts. "This will disrupt the audio monitors," he explained, attaching it to the cell's control panel. "We can speak freely now." Ishara's luminous eyes tracked his movements. "They punished you for speaking to me." "Worth it," Dominic replied with a half-smile. He settled on the floor beside her cell, close enough that only the transparent barrier separated them. Over the weeks that followed, these midnight conversations became his entire world. Ishara shared the history of her people, a civilization of philosophers and scientists who had developed technologies beyond human comprehension. "Our worlds contained crystalline formations your kind calls novatite," she explained one night, "essential for quantum propulsion. When we refused to surrender our planets, your coalition declared us non-sentient predators. It justified the slaughter." As she spoke, Dominic found himself mesmerized not just by her words, but by the graceful movements of her body, powerful yet precise. The violet iridescence of her skin shifted with her breathing, creating patterns that seemed to dance in the low light. "Your scientists test my physical capabilities," she said, stretching her massive form. "But they never ask why our bodies evolved this way." "Why did they?" Dominic asked, finding his voice suddenly hoarse. Ishara's multifaceted eyes glinted. "Our home planet's atmosphere contained high levels of ionized particles. Our skin absorbs energy." She moved closer to the barrier between them, including emotional energy. "We sense it, channel it." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken tension. What are you sensing now?" Dominic whispered. "Your heartbeat has accelerated," she observed, her voice dropping to a rumbling purr that vibrated through the barrier. "Your pupils are dilated. Heat patterns in your skin have changed." Dominic swallowed hard. "That's embarrassing." "It is." "Fascinating," she countered, pressing one massive hand against the barrier. "Among my kind, such responses would indicate deep compatibility." Dominic placed his palm against hers, the barrier between them suddenly feeling impossibly thin. And what would happen then? Between compatible Caraxes? Her four eyes half closed, a gesture he'd come to recognize as expression of vulnerability. "We would form a bond, a sharing of energy that transcends physical form." The facility suddenly plunged into darkness as the backup generators failed, a mechanical issue Dominic had deliberately engineered. In the pitch black, only Ishara's eyes and the subtle bioluminescent patterns across her skin provided light. "The containment field is down," she whispered, "for approximately 40 seconds before the tertiary systems engage." Dominic didn't hesitate. He pressed his override code into the panel, and the barrier between them disappeared. For one breathless moment, they faced each other with nothing separating them. Her hand, massive, taloned, alien, reached out with unexpected gentleness to touch his face. The contact sent electricity racing through his body, every nerve ending igniting with sensation. He gasped as he felt her consciousness brush against his, tentative, questioning. "What is this?" he managed to ask as something warm and liquid seemed to pool in his mind. "The beginning of bonding," she murmured, her voice somehow inside his head now. Do you wish me to stop? No, Dominic whispered, leaning into her touch. Show me. The energy between them intensified as Ashara drew him against her powerful body. Her skin pulsed with bioluminescence that synchronized with his heartbeat. The sensation of her mind melding with his was overwhelming pleasure unlike anything human experience could prepare him for, intimate beyond physical constraints. When the emergency lights flickered back on 40 seconds later, they separated reluctantly, the barrier reactivating between them. But something had changed irrevocably. Through their brief connection, Dominic had glimpsed the vastness of her mind, the depth of her species' suffering, and the devastating truth they had been hiding. There's something you didn't tell me, he said, still trembling from their encounter. Ashara's expression grew solemn. The Novatite fields were not the only reason for our subjugation. When our species bonds with compatible others, it unlocks abilities that your military considers threatening. What abilities? Psychic amplification, matter manipulation. When fully bonded, matched pairs can. The facility's alert system suddenly blared to life, cutting her off. Through the speakers came Director Prescott's voice. Attention, all personnel. We have received new directives regarding Specimen K-937. Termination protocols will commence at 0800 hours. Dominic's blood ran cold. They're going to kill you. Ashara's eyes met his, fierce determination replacing fear. Not if we complete our bond first. He understood then that there would be no turning back. Whatever happened next would change not just their lives, but potentially the fate of her entire species. And despite every rational thought screaming caution, Dominic knew his path forward. Tell me what we need to do. Dawn approached with cold inevitability as Dominic made his final preparations. The ventilation shaft access panel lay open beside him, tools scattered in calculated disarray, evidence of maintenance work that would explain his presence in the restricted section during the early hours. 6 minutes until the guard rotation, he whispered, working feverishly to override the cell's security protocols. The knowledge he'd absorbed during their brief mental connection had changed him, gifting him with an intuitive understanding of systems that would have baffled him weeks ago. Ashara stood motionless in her cell, her powerful body coiled with potential energy. When the field drops, we will have 20 seconds before the automated systems detect the anomaly. And then 3 minutes to reach the hangar bay, Dominic finished, their thoughts still echoing between them despite the barrier. The security panel blinked from red to green. As the containment field dissipated, Ashara stepped forward, her massive form unrestrained for the first time since her capture. She towered over him, magnificent and terrible in her freedom. Now she said, extending her hand. Dominic didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined, his small and pale against her massive violet talons. The contact sent a surge of energy coursing through his body, the partial bond they'd formed earlier strengthening with each heartbeat. They moved as one through the shadowed corridors of the facility, her bioluminescence dimmed to near invisibility. Twice they froze as patrol drones hummed past, Ashara's control over her body's energy signature rendering them virtually undetectable to the sensors. The bond is growing stronger, Dominic whispered as they crouched in a maintenance alcove. He could feel her emotions flowing through him, her fierce determination, her tightly controlled fear, and something deeper that made his heart race. It is only the beginning, she replied, her eyes glowing with newfound intensity. When it is complete, neither distance nor time will separate our consciousness. An alarm suddenly blared through the facility. Their escape had been discovered. Ashara's spines bristled as her body tensed. We must hurry, she growled. They will activate the containment protocols. They abandoned stealth for speed, racing toward the hangar bay where a small transport vessel awaited. One Dominic had spent the past 3 days subtly preparing for long-range flight. As they rounded the final corner, they came face-to-face with a security team led by Dr. Wexler himself. Reese, the scientist gasped, raising his hands in a placating gesture as the guards leveled their weapons. Step away from the specimen. It's controlling you somehow. Her name is Ashara, Dominic said steadily. And she's not controlling anything. I'm helping her because what we're doing to her people is wrong. Don't be a fool, Wexler pleaded. The Caraxes destroyed 3 colonies. They're apex predators. Lies, Ashara's voice resonated through the corridor. Show them, Dominic. Understanding flowed between them through their strengthening bond. Dominic reached out, taking her massive hand in his and interlacing their fingers. The contact completed something vital between them, a circuit closing, power surging. Light erupted from where their skin touched, spreading in luminous patterns across both their bodies. Dominic gasped as his consciousness expanded exponentially, Ashara's mind fully joining with his. Knowledge flowed between them, memories, emotions, truths. The security team stumbled back as the energy around the bonded pair intensified. Through their joined minds, Ashara accessed the facility's systems, projecting images directly into the building's holographic displays. Suddenly, the truth she had carried was visible to all. Recorded history from her people's archives showing peaceful first contact, followed by human treachery and manufactured evidence of Caraxes atrocities. The colonies were evacuated, Dominic said, his voice overlapping with Ashara's in perfect harmony. Your own military destroyed them and blamed her people to justify the invasion. Dr. Wexler's face had gone ashen as he watched the undeniable evidence unfold. Director Prescott knew? They all knew, the bonded pair replied. The Caraxes refused to be subjugated, so they were dehumanized, made monsters in the public consciousness. In the stunned silence that followed, Dominic and Ashara moved toward the hangar bay, the security team parting before them like water. Their joined energy had grown so powerful that the very air around them shimmered with potential. Inside the transport vessel, as the engines hummed to life, Ashara enfolded Dominic in her 4 powerful arms. Her skin against his glowed with increasing intensity as their bond reached its final stage. What happens now? He asked, though he could already sense the answer forming in their shared consciousness. Now we find my people, she said, her voice resonant with newfound power. Those who survive in hiding. With what we've learned, with what we've become together, we can awaken them. The transport lifted off, breaking free of the facility's artificial gravity. Through the view screen, the vastness of space beckoned, no longer a void but a canvas of possibility. They'll come after us, Dominic said, watching the station recede behind them. Ashara's eyes, all 4 now glowing with incandescent power, fixed on the stars ahead. Let them try. As if in response to her challenge, the transport sensors detected pursuit craft launching from the station. Dominic felt momentary fear, quickly replaced by calm certainty flowing from Ashara's mind to his. She placed her hands on the ship's control panel, and energy surged from her body, through Dominic, through their bond, into the ship itself. The vessel's conventional engines suddenly blazed with improbable power as Ashara channeled energy into its systems. This is what they feared, she whispered as the pursuing ships fell away behind them, unable to match their impossible speed. Not our strength, but our potential. When bonded, my kind can manipulate energy at its fundamental level. Dominic watched in awe as stars blurred around them, the ship accelerating beyond its design capabilities, guided by their combined will. In their shared mental space, he saw visions of what was to come, scattered Caraxes emerging from hiding, bonds forming, powers awakening. A revolution not of violence but of revealed truth. They called your people monsters, he said, reaching up to trace the patterns on her luminous face with gentle fingers. But they never saw what I see. Ashara's expression softened as she leaned into his touch. And what do you see? Hope, he answered simply. And the most beautiful woman in the galaxy. Their lips met, alien and human, different yet perfectly matched, as the ship carried them toward distant stars and the promise of liberation. In that kiss, the final barriers between their minds dissolved completely, their consciousness merging into something greater than either had been alone. They were no longer separate beings, but something new in the universe, pioneers of a connection that might ultimately bridge worlds and species. And as they sped toward the hidden enclaves where her people awaited, Dominic and Ashara carried with them the most dangerous weapon against oppression, truth, illuminated by love. Behind them, across the facility they'd fled, the evidence Ashara had released continued to spread, transmitted by stunned witnesses, impossible to contain. The lies that had justified genocide were crumbling, and with them, the certainty upon which an empire had been built. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would they.